Welcome one and all to another day, another episode here at The Damage with me, John Iadarola, and my new Thursday buddy, Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, how's it going?
I'm fine. I don't know, John. The EPA is being gutted by 65%. I don't know, man.
I didn't see that. 65%.
Yeah.
Yeah, who needs, the government telling companies what toxic chemicals they can put in your kids' bodies? Who needs that? Get off their back.
We're in a Simpsons episode. Like, once you realize you're in a Simpsons episode, everything becomes like, I can be calm about that. Like, oh yeah, it's all a joke. It's all a joke.
Yeah, I want to. For me, and I know Horseman's saying new intro. I know, I need to do a new intro. I want to take a sabbatical for 6 months. And I just want to travel around the country and I want to visit everyone who is like, it doesn't really matter who wins. And I just want to go and I just want to flick them between the eyes, just lightly one time and then walk to the next person, just flick them. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. Parties are exactly the same. The politicians are exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. But anyway,
you could actually do, I bet you could convince, ye old TYT to send you on a little trip, talking to the people. You're great at doing that. Everybody knows that.
Maybe we'll save send Schuster or something. He's got more experience with talking with regular people. But
I like when you sort of you clown on them without them realizing they're being clowned on. It's very fun.
Yeah, that's true, and that'll work most of the time. Eventually, I'll be stabbed and killed or whatever. But
sure.
It works for a bit. But anyway, look for that tour to be coming soon. But anyway, glad to have you here, Francesca. We have a lot of news to talk about. We also have a special guest who's going to be joining us to begin. I'm pretty sure to begin the aftermath. Yes, Matt Gertz of Media Matters is going to be back on the show. He's been here before. Matt Gertz, not Matt Gaetz. Like we were just talking about, they're not the same. They sound the same, they're not the same. But he's gonna be joining us to talk about the Fox Newsification of the Trump administration, as well as what it means that Dan Bongino in particular has been picked to be second in command at the FBI of all people. And maybe at some point during that interview, I'll remind everyone of my little experience interacting with Dan Bongino and how utterly ridiculous that was. He is a cartoon character. But anyway, we'll have all that coming up in the aftermath. Before that, we have a lot of news. And so it's time for you to do what you do, which is to hit the like button, share the stream, blah, blah. Send us comments, tweets, super chats. You might earn yourself a Blue Ribbon gift card. And with all that said, Francesca, are you ready to do this thing?
Yes.
Okay, well, we're gonna be starting off, everyone. Our theme for the first block of the day is media submission. And so that's gonna be a lot of fun. Let's jump to this. Donald Trump has been at war with the media since before he even became president in the first place. And when he was inaugurated the first time, he brawled with them on a daily basis, entire news outlets, individual journalists, but it's risen to a whole new level this time around. And so they're cracking down in what some would say is an authoritarian fashion on the free press. And so for the first time ever, the White House Correspondents Association has ceded control of pool reports and reporters to the Trump administration. So rather than the Correspondents Association choosing who it is that's going to be doing this, it's now just the Trump administration. And so if they like your outlet and they like what you're saying, then you can cover them. If they don't, either you don't use one of their stupid propaganda culture war terms, or maybe if you tweet something they don't like, well then you're gone. You've been locked out by the government. So that's really fun. And so the association, it represents more than 60 news organizations, said it would no longer manage the rotating cast of reporters who attend White House events or compile the shared accounts of news that are widely used in American political journalism. Their reporting is used for a lot of other outlets as well. Instead, it's going to be a laundry list of right-wing podcasters, probably. Andrew Tate will probably be there. He's backstage side, that's a lot of fun. And so the president of the WHCA, Eugene Daniels, said, this board will not assist any attempt by this administration or any other in taking over independent press coverage of the White House. Each of your organizations will have to decide whether or not you will take part in these new government-appointed pools. Well, it's feeling nicely Hungarian around here these days.
Oh yeah, but anyway, real North Korea vibes.
A little bit North Korea as well. The WHCA, quote, cannot ensure that the reports filed by government selected poolers will be held to the same standards that we have had in place for decades. And of course, they will not. They will be held to certain standards of loyalty and compliance, submission, whether you do basically press releases for the regime. And by the way, not to say that like the pool of reporters that's been covering the White House has always been awesome and has always asked the sort of questions we would want them to ask, has focused on the topics we'd want them to focus on. But at least in theory, there was like ethics, or like some of them at one point had cared about journalism. That's done now. And so that's the first blow against the media over the last day. And by the way, the courts have already basically paved the way for this. They said, yeah, you banning the AP because they won't call it the Gulf of America exclusively. Yeah, that's cool. The courts have given a rubber stamp and a big thumbs up to that, which is very fun. And it's not just in the pool of reporters that he's doing this war on media. At the cabinet meeting, the gathering of billionaires yesterday, he said, I could have lost the election because of that. The CBS 60 Minutes Harris interview. Which, by the way, we've already seen the full transcript. The claims that he was making about them cutting up or changing answers, it's just not true. It's just not true. And so he believes that they, I guess, cost him the election that he won. I don't know. And he wants them to pay $20 billion or so, $10 to $20 billion he wants. And the thing is, his claims are utterly baseless. But if you think that means they're not gonna pay him, not $20 billion, obviously, but God knows how much. Have you been paying attention to what's been happening recently? Everybody's settling baseless BS lawsuits left and right. They're handing over money to him, not because they have to by the law, but because they have to because of the mob rule that our government has now become. If they don't hand over massive amounts of money to him, not his campaign, this is literally money to his bank account or his presidential library or whatever, then God knows what will happen to CBS News from here on out. And so they either potentially, I don't know, lose their broadcast license or lose every remaining shred of credibility that they have. And likely a bunch of their employees and reporters will quit. And they should in that case, but they're put in a very difficult position, which the media always is in authoritarian regimes. And so we have more on this, but Francesca, please weigh in.
I mean, I have a little bit of a different take because I do think that an organization like CBS could absolutely fight back. I mean, if anyone has the funds to do so, it is going to be these multinational conglomerates. It's that they don't want to, right? I mean, we've said this before, but like the oligarchy is complete. The line in the sand has been drawn, and they would rather just pay up and get in good with the president, who is really open for business. You know, whatever new aims that the CEOs of these companies have, whatever they want to get into, maybe it's defense contractors. Who knows? Everyone's big on defense these days. Maybe it's AI. And so I do think that look, with all things, I think it's important to remember that like Donald Trump dismantling everything teaches us something about what was before, right? White House press correspondents pool was actually fairly, I mean, obviously they're not gonna necessarily let TYT in, but they did have a rotating number of diverse outlets, of actual reputable outlets. They did their due diligence and whatnot. And that was something that obviously Trump in the first term hated. I mean, this is the thing, John, aren't you part of you like, it's like, why didn't they do that before? And it's like, oh, because they were just, they were getting their feels about him. They were trying to sort of mapping the area, figuring out what was weak and what they could come back with. And now they've got the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. They got a bunch of psychos in the first term. They didn't have as many or people who were as sort of locked on what they wanted. And so this makes sense. And so yeah, you're gonna have bloggers. Jesus, how old am I? They're gonna have TikTokers, but TikTok is Chinese.
Which could be fine. But again, this is about loyalty. This isn't about like, oh, we're not just gonna have the newspapers and cable news. We're gonna have, let's see, we'll get 2 sort of leftist TikTokers, 2 right-wing No, that's not what they're gonna do. We know that. This is not just a shift to new media. This is a shift to right-wing media, which again, the right-wing independent media is Fox News. That's all it is. The disagreements between them are utterly meaningless. It's the same thing. It's not independent when both are paid for by the same billionaires. It has yes, okay, Ben Shapiro's in a slightly crappier studio than Jesse Waters, I suppose. It's the same thing serving the interests of the same people.
Exactly.
And so please, let's destroy the myth of independent right-wing media. It does not exist.
Can I just really quick plug, because on my other show, not that this is my show, but you know what I'm saying, it kind of is, because like that's how long.
That's why people are here.
That's why people are here, and I love you. But no, on America Unhinged on Tuesday, we interviewed Brian Karem, who's been part of the White House press pool for decades now. And you know, he like studied under Helen Thomas or was friends with her, and like he's excellent. He was responsible for asking some of the toughest questions of Trump his first go around, and so he had a great sort of insight into explaining, like what goes into being part of this press pool and why it's so unprecedented to handpick who is now reporting on you.
Yeah, look, it's utterly ridiculous. And like, can you imagine if like President AOC is like, you know what? I didn't like Jesse Waters' monologue about straws, and so Peter Doocy, you're not only banned, but we're locking you up in the basement of the White House. And I felt like they kind of cut up my interview when they played it on Hannity, and so I'm suing Fox News for $20 billion. Again, you know, like we're never gonna have this sort of madness on the other side, and I'm glad that we won't. But that is what we're talking about here.
It's the billionaire playbook. Really quickly, you know how Gawker was sued out of existence by Hulk Hogan and Peter Thiel. That's the playbook. It's we're gonna sue any smaller organization out of existence or bigger organization.
Exactly. And by the way, and the right wing loves every bit of this. Again, they desperately want government, actual censorship, not like a social media platform is like, hey, you can't use racial slurs, which is not censorship. That's literally not what the First Amendment is. They want the government to be infringing on your right to free speech, your right to free association, the right of the free press. Actual literal censorship is what they desperately want. And with that said, let's turn to, we have the media that's willing to fight them or whatever. We'll just briefly bring up graphic 6. Him saying that, I think he's mad because of like Michael Wolff's book or whatever. He's gonna sue publishers, authors, and quote, the media in general. He's gonna sue media, like the concept of media. And I don't know what you call this, I call it free speech absolutism, and you love to see it. But with that said, Donald Trump is cracking down on media that won't go along with what he wants, but he's also boosting the media that is doing everything they can to slobber all over his feet, as he did with Elon Musk in that video we showed you. Here is what happened after the cabinet meeting yesterday.
Lawrence, say we did a great job, please. Okay? Say it was unbelievable. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. I'll right back here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pulitzer Prize.
Sir, how many peacekeepers are going to send there?
What will you do? How will you dress? Lawrence, look at Lawrence. This guy's making a fortune. He never had it so good. Lawrence, say we did a great job, please. Okay? Say it was unbelievable.
So that's Donald Trump talking to, I think it's Lawrence Jones at Fox News, being like, say we did a good job, say we're amazing. And here's the thing, he's going to. That's what he's gonna do. He said earlier he's never had it so good, and he hasn't. This is easy time. Like being an actual journalist in this time is difficult. You're risking your job. You could be risking your freedom to do actual journalism, but that's not what they do at Fox News. They're stenographers for the regime and for billionaires generally. And you had both of those in that video, that cabinet of 13 billionaires. And so Lawrence Jones will go back and he will say that they did an amazing job. And you know what? If he does, he could be Secretary of State someday. Like literally, if you're a Fox News host and you sufficiently grovel at the feet of dear leader, you could be in charge of Veterans Affairs or something. He literally had Fox News personalities sitting at his left hand there with Pete Hegseth, and all you have to do is lie for the regime, lie for the dear leader, pretend that you don't see any of his massive flaws, the lies, the hypocrisies, the affairs, the crimes, never acknowledge any of that. And you could become not only incredibly wealthy, but also incredibly powerful. And so that's what he wants, and that's what he's gonna get there. And it is utterly pathetic. And you're already seeing it, by the way. Like we're gonna have Matt Gertz from Media Matters on a little bit later on, but he cataloged all the ways that Sean Hannity and them talked about Barack Obama's executive orders, that it was tyranny, it was a dictator by dictate and all that. And now, oh my God, they love the executive orders. Oh, please give me more executive orders, daddy. Please shower me at executive orders. And that's the way that they manipulate their audience into hating Barack Obama for basically doing nothing for 8 years and lauding Trump for doing actual damage, ignoring the separation of power, something that they crowed about before. Now they absolutely love it. And so this is what a compliant, submissive media that will benefit financially from this, not just financially, but maybe in terms of power as well, actually looks like.
Yeah, I mean, what's wild to me is the need to be like, say it was good, say it was good. It's just like, sir, if you want your cabinet meetings to look good, please don't have any reporters, because you cannot lie about the things that were done and said in that meeting. Like Elon Musk joking that, oops, we defunded the Ebola research, but we put it back even though we didn't. And oops, measles outbreaks and deaths aren't actually happening, which we're gonna talk about. It's like, you know what I mean? No amount of spin, John. Like, no amount of spin can really sell this to the American people. That's why Fox News is like, hey, look, a car chase. Whoa, you know, like whenever anything important happens, they will cut to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, look, ideally, they want the Democrats to be in charge because then they can just endlessly attack them or whatever.
Yes.
When Donald Trump is actually getting things done, then, oh dear God, this is gonna be really bad for our viewers, and that's really hard, which is why, again, they talk about car chases, or that's why Candace Owens all of a sudden is just like plucking politicians around the world and declaring that they're transgender or whatever. She doesn't wanna have to give a daily accounting of all the ways what Donald Trump is doing is devastating the people who trust her, look up to her, admire her.
Yep.
And so you're gonna see a lot more of that. It doesn't seem to be hurting them ratings wise though. We'll see as the inflation goes up and everything, but for that, we do need to move to one more topic. Jeff Bezos, obviously the owner of Amazon as well as the Washington Post, has full on bent the knee to Donald Trump and the regime. He, as I'm sure you know, already killed the Post's endorsement of Kamala Harris before the election, gave Trump $1 million, just wrote him a check. He just handed over $1 million to our dear emperor and had dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago. I'm sure it was lovely. And now he's gonna kill the op-ed section of the Post as well, so that nobody who reads this newspaper hears anything that could challenge what's happening, which obviously benefits people like Jeff Bezos. And so he announced this change to the op-ed on Twitter, which I think is quite fitting. I love to see the two richest men in the world playing nice. And so he says, I'm ready to let you know about a change coming to our opinion pages. We're gonna be writing every day in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. We'll cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others. Or maybe not at all, as billionaires buy up every newspaper in the country. Maybe they just won't be heard literally at all because we're richer than you, so we're better than you and we get the final say. He says, I'm confident that free markets and personal liberties are right for America. I also believe these viewpoints are underserved in the current market of ideas and news opinion. Which is true. When I saw this announcement, I had to look up what a free market was because I've never heard them boosted in newspapers or on cable news. I've never even heard of the concept before. It's all commie drivel. Anyway, he says there was a time when a newspaper, especially one that was a local monopoly, might have seen it as a service to bring to the reader's doorstep every morning a broad-based opinion section that sought to cover all views. Today, the internet does that job. Don't worry, you've got Twitter, you're fine. I am of America and for America and proud to be so. Our country did not get here by being typical, and a big part of America's success has been freedom in the economic realm and everywhere else. Freedom is ethical, it minimizes coercion, and practical. It drives creativity, invention, and prosperity. And then he talks about the editor who is stepping down or whatever. And so I talked about this a little bit on the Young Turks yesterday. So not only is this obviously like this is the lowercase c censorship. It's his platform, he can do it if he wants, it's not the government, but this is hardly conducive. Like he's talking about freedom as he says, you are not free to talk about such things in my op-ed section, which again, is his right to do, but it's obviously fundamentally hypocritical. Also, when he says freedom, he means freedom for corporations, lack of regulation. That's it, not freedom for you. Personal liberties, you think they're gonna be having op-eds about trans people's rights to live a full life of dignity and inclusion? Those sorts of personal liberties, you think you're gonna have a lot of op-eds boosting, regained access to abortion rights and those sorts of things. Again, that's personal liberty, but that's not what he means when he says it. He means rights of corporations to do whatever they want in pursuit of profits, even if it means screwing over or maybe damaging or killing you and your family. That's the sort of personal liberty that he's talking about. That's the free market. Oh, yeah. Oh, are they gonna be doing op-eds about cutting government subsidies for industries, which is a violation of the principle of free markets? It's giving a leg up to certain corporations or industries over others? No, because again, these words are all massive billionaire propaganda. And so, look, I don't know how many like young people especially were getting their news from the Washington Post op-ed section before, but when we were already seeing so many of these tech billionaires just laying down for Donald Trump, and obviously they're gonna make billions for doing so, this is just another big step in that direction. What do you think?
I'm very excited for the exhumed body of Milton Friedman to be, the free market, there's like moths coming out of his face. Very important, clickety clack, clack, clack in my op-ed. Like I love the idea of who would pen these op-eds, like it will, like the carried interest loophole will be just right now. It'll be like, I'm very important. It's very fun to me to imagine who possibly could be writing them. Here's the thing, this is a natural conclusion of what happens when you allow corporations to merge and merge and merge and merge and merge. And oops, now just one guy is buying a major news outlet. The purchasing of Washington Post by Jeff Bezos should have never been allowed. There are countries around this world that have far more robust telecommunications laws, regulations, and antitrust stopgaps to prevent things like this from happening. Let's leave aside the fact that Amazon is already a monopoly that should be broken up, but talking about actually then buying a major newspaper, which by the way, remember how he said he wasn't gonna have any involvement in it? How quickly in just, 8-10 years, the lines in the sands have been drawn. They got too scared by the Marxist Joe Biden for even looking into the monopolistic practices of a company like Amazon. And they're all like, all right, well now I'm gonna throw down with fascism. And they always have, and they always will. And so when we finally wrest control back from these psychos, we not only need to pass the PRO Act, the Green New Deal, we need to not only pass the Voting Rights Act, codify Roe. We need a new telecommunications bill that breaks up these big companies and makes it illegal for the richest people to buy the airwaves or the lines of communication, including obviously the biggest one we know of, Elon buying Twitter. Absolutely, it should be illegal. And so this is part of a healthy democracy. That's part of a free press. Oh no, a free press is Barry Weiss making excuses for the Zig Heil. I forgot.
Exactly, that's all that counts. I'm just gonna end with Bernie Sanders saying this is what oligarch ownership of the media looks like. The second richest guy in the world owns the Washington Post. He's now declared that the editorial page of that paper is going Trump right wing. Surprise, Mr. Musk agrees we must support independent media, 100%. And I would love to see more of the progressives in the Senate and the House supporting independent media, actually going on it. But anyway, he's 100% right. And again, right wing absolutely loves Charlie Kirk's like, oh yay, the culture is changing. You're not allowed to express ideas in this massive newspaper. And that's consistent with what I've always said the media should be like. And so if the LA Times, well, the LA Times is likely to do the exact same thing if it already hasn't. But let's say that they were to be like, no, you're not expressing any right wing opinions anymore. I'm sure Charlie Kirk would be like, that's cool. That's just the culture changing. I don't have any problem with that or anything. Again, these people are utter hypocrites who just want, it all comes down to weakness wants protection and assurance. They want to win automatically. They love the idea of going to like a college campus and debating an unprepared sophomore or whatever, but in the actual marketplace of ideas, they don't want competition. They don't want to have to actually stand on their platform, on their principles. That's why all of their time and attention and money goes to distractions from politics. And then we just do that long enough. We demonize trans people for long enough until eventually the billionaires just say, no, you can't publish that stuff anymore. Washington Post, you can't publish it. You activists and journalists on Twitter, we're gonna ban you. You don't get to express those thoughts. We're gonna ban links to other platforms. We're gonna do all that stuff. There's nothing they love more than actual censorship. With that said, we need to take our first break. There's a lot more to come after this. Anyway, wifey, childless cat, Lady Dragon says, coming in late and I forgot it's Thursday, which means Francesca. My heart feels so happy when I see the both of you. You are both such wonderful lights in this darkness we're currently in. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Skittlebutt Dragon Rasted said, trickle down Euronomics. It's definitely true. And Ryan said, AI about to take over the newspapers. Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, you're gonna have more and more actual journalists who don't want to be affiliated with these platforms, but getting rid of them, like, you think Jeff Bezos cares if the articles are just, you have an LLM that just takes a government press release and a Trump tweet and just crafts something positive towards it? You think he cares? What? I don't even know why they have an op-ed section anymore. I could see that entirely being replaced by AI generated debates or whatever.
And John, sorry, this is like, speaking of Simpsons episodes, it's just like, it's very funny to dismantle the media. It's such a like, he's already dead situation, you know, where you're like, people are being fired en masse. We've been seeing this for the last decade. Print is dying, right? And so, and again, this has been a long path towards this, and conglomerates are to blame. And media consolidation is to blame.
It's sort of accelerating, but the media's been in trouble for a long time. I forgot, by the way, to do this, and I want to give everyone a little bit of hope.
Oh, suddenly he cares. Yes.
One day.
Wait, is that a 900?
935.
Okay, here's where we're gonna
get
get
the damage report until the next presidential election happens.
Oh, episodes. I was like,
not days. There's more days. I'm not counting weekends. Weekends are for you, everybody.
Okay.
This is just how many days of news discussion and all that.
I always forget what that counts.
Thank you as always to our members. A lot of people have become members since the election, which I love. You would expect, like, good people like you would be utterly turned off by the news. You'd be feeling apathetic, but that's not what we're seeing. And that gives me a lot of hope and is a real morale boost. So thank you to everybody. I'm gonna thank the members specifically as soon as Google allows me back into my documents, which it decided, even though I'm actively using them right now, should probably sign you out. Love that for us. Anyway, let me also mention, by the way, as of right now, we broadcast on a number of different platforms. One of them is Twitch, and on Twitch, you can express a wide range of viewpoints. Do you expect that will always be the case?
Yeah.
Why would it? Why wouldn't Jeff Bezos crack down on that? Like, think about all the criticism of Israel that happens on Twitch, the criticism of capitalism and billionaires and all that. Why not crack down on that? Why? Because it would be bad for business? He doesn't need that. He's gonna have government protections for Amazon and stuff like that. That's way more money for him. This isn't, the moves he's made right now aren't good for Washington Post. It's not gonna generate more revenue there. He doesn't care. It's a tiny little fraction of his wealth. It's a thing he can give to the regime, and in return, he's gonna make bank. Anyway, John Fox, thank you for gifting a membership. Benjamin Morrill as well, thank you. James Hickson gifted 5 memberships, super nice of you, thank you. Ruby Dooby Doo Dragon gifted a membership, thank you. James Hickson, member for 7 months, says, hey, I've been watching TDR since the early days of COVID. I can't wait to see what new fresh pandemic will come under RFK Jr.'s watch. Well, we're actually gonna be talking about that very soon, so you don't have to wait. Gary Cooper says, John, I can't find the opt-in for receiving gift subscriptions. Can you give me any advice? I apologize. There is a process. Maybe somebody in the YouTube chat can message it. But also, I think if you Google, I don't know exactly how to do it. I'm gonna see if maybe someone in our team can let me know, because it is important. I want people to have access to these memberships that are being gifted. So, but thank you for messaging about that. And damn it, Wayne, hey Wayne, Wasabi Dragon says, glad to see Franny in the show, a great team. I appreciate that, super nice of you. There's a lot more messages. We're gonna get to as many as we can, but we have to get back to the news first. We'll be right back. Okay, one and all, if you're just joining us now, please hit the like button as we jump into our next topic. The measles outbreak here in the US has already claimed its first victim, which you would think would be taken seriously by whoever it is that's serving as the health secretary. But unfortunately, we've got this guy saying this.
We are following the measles epidemic every day. I think there's 124 people who have contracted measles at this point, mainly in Gaines County, Texas. We're watching it, and there are about 20 people hospitalized, mainly for quarantine. We're watching it. We put out a post on it yesterday, and we're going to continue to follow it. Incidentally, There have been 4 measles outbreaks this year. In this country last year, there were 16. So it's not unusual. We have measles outbreaks every year.
That's reassuring because I know a lot of Americans are really worried about this, seeing that measles are spreading, that a person has actually died, which you do not hear that, as we'll show you. It's been over a decade since that happened, but you have the health secretary who didn't even bother to sit up in his chair as the first outbreak. He's just slumped over. You know what? It's really typical. It happens. Get off my back. I don't care. This isn't even nearly as big as other measles outbreaks I've contributed to. Ask me when 100 people have died or whatever, and then maybe I'll pretend to give a damn about it. So that is a decided meh from the health secretary. But what do you expect? It's RFK Jr. Make America die of measles again. Print that on a hat. So anyway, a child has died, regrettably, an unvaccinated child. Please get your kids vaccinated. Don't listen to RFK Jr. when your kid's life is on the line, okay? Don't live a life of regret, wishing that you had questioned this conspiracist, this quack. But anyway, we already have the largest outbreak the state has seen in 30 years. He says it's typical. No, it's the largest outbreak in 3 decades. It's mostly affecting children and teenagers who were unvaccinated. And you know why? Because the vaccine protects against it. That's why, okay? I'm not a scientist or whatever. I'm not RFK Jr., but I understand that much at least. I have a bit of common sense. And so the profile of the victims in this case, it's high vaccine exemption rates in schools, 1 in 5 kids apparently. 85 of 90 cases were unvaccinated, most cases under the age of 18. Exemption rates above 5% limit the level of achievable vaccination coverage. That's what scientists say, and they're well above that at this point. And I just want you to bear in mind, this is a disease that we had successfully eradicated. We won, we came together, science actually delivered, and we beat this thing before. And now we're back to a thing where this is regularly happening. So if you bring up a chart of measles cases, yeah, in 2019, there were a lot more. Just think about what people have been saying about vaccines over the last 5 years. Gee, I wonder why all of a sudden it's coming back. It's because of people like RFK Jr. that RFK Jr. can now say, well, this is typical. Again, it's not, but it's becoming more typical again because of the advocacy of people like him. And right now, it's measles. It might be other stuff soon. By the way, the FDA abruptly canceled a flu vaccine meeting with no explanation and no word of when it's gonna happen. This work needs to be done. They need to identify the most dangerous and most transmissible strains of the flu that are going around so they can produce the tailored vaccines that protect people against them. And so maybe there'll be a big flu outbreak. Is it gonna take bird flu seriously? Kinda doubt it at this point. And so we are just hoping that somehow we don't have another pandemic, because if we do, it is undoubtedly gonna be far worse than the last one that Donald Trump delivered to us.
Yeah, there's so much to say here. Obviously, the first death in a decade of measles, in a decade. And some of the anti-vax propaganda that RFK Jr. has been pivotal in spewing and spreading is the reason that there is low vaccination rates. He's trying to blame it on the Mennonite community, but there's measles outbreaks and outbreaks like this in like Beverly Hills. Right? In places where they all listen to Jenny McCarthy and they're like, yeah, it causes autism, and all this. And I think it's really important to understand, we're told by the right that, children have rights and child rights and rights, parental rights and all this. It's like nobody's looking after these children. That child should be alive, right? That child didn't have a choice. What's that kid supposed to do? Go and like get their own vaccine, right? This is kids like elementary school age. So this is on parents, this is on communities. And I think about those the 85 of 90 were vaccinated, unvaccinated. But what if the 1 in 5, what if that's your child? What if the 5 is your kid that got sick? What if the one of the 5 are the people that die. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it spreads beyond just people who
You're talking about
are
herd immunity,
unvaccinated.
basically.
Exactly. It spreads, but I'm saying it spreads beyond people who are, just because you're vaccinated doesn't necessarily mean you're protected, is what I'm saying. But yeah, this is him. He's seen a lot more death in American Samoa that he caused by sowing doubt on the vaccine, and it's going to be more and more and more, and all on bunk science. There's absolutely no evidence of vaccines causing autism. And the other thing is, lastly, John, we've been talking about the COVID vaccine or the flu vaccine. First of all, it's terrifying that they might stop research on which flu strain, would go into the next year's vaccine. But, unlike COVID or the flu vaccine, which is, you can still get sick. You can get less sick, right? Especially with the COVID vaccine. We know it works more like the flu vaccine. The measles vaccine doesn't work like that. The measles vaccine is very effective. It stamps it out completely from societies. And so the fact that we're playing super fast and loose with the definitions, with the science, honestly, it's what RFK has wrought, right?
Exactly, and it's only gonna get worse from here. And I'm gonna close on this. In the measles book, published by Children's Health Defense, the anti-vaccine nonprofit he founded, Mr. Kennedy wrote that, quote, measles outbreaks have been fabricated to create fear, leading government officials to, quote, inflict unnecessary and risky vaccines on millions of children for the sole purpose of fattening industry profits. So you should be afraid of the lie of measles outbreaks. You should not be afraid of actual measles outbreaks. You shouldn't be afraid that a child died. You shouldn't be worried for your child, okay? Because they're just trying to make money. And so a child has already died, and undoubtedly more children will die because of Rfk Jr.'s stupidity and corruption. The fact that he does not have the mental wherewithal to understand the science that he's constantly surrounding himself in, and his desire and his success over his life in enriching himself personally by spreading this philosophical snake oil, this buffoonish quackery. He has enriched himself. He's fine, okay? And almost certainly well vaccinated, by the way. It's your kids that potentially might have to die so he can continue to rake in huge amounts of money. Now we're gonna move on to a related topic. We're gonna stay on healthcare, but whenever we're ready, let's jump into this. Mike Johnson has some seemingly conflicting goals, okay? He wants to gut the social safety net, the net that you and your family likely rely on in a number of different ways, but he also doesn't want you to end up being mad at him and the Republicans for that, and that's a very difficult thing to do, hard to do in practice, but he's gonna give it his level best. So here he is on CNN.
Going to cut benefits for people who are rightfully deserve it. And watch this play out, just reserve your judgment. The White House has said that we're not gonna do that. The House Republicans have said we're not gonna do that. And Senator Kennedy said, hell no. Okay, so you heard it from the Senate, the House, and the White House. So let's let this play out. We have a long football game to play. Last night was the kickoff of the game. So just watch it play out and you'll see. I think the American people are gonna benefit greatly by the package that we're gonna produce for them.
I just love how clearly on her face you can tell that Caitlin Collins isn't buying literally any of that, and she shouldn't, because he's effing lying. And so, as Aaron Rupar pointed out, moments after vowing no cuts to Medicaid, he said he supports work requirements for Medicaid, which, to be clear, is not the only way that they're going to be cutting Medicaid. They've promised $880 billion in cuts. Do they think that we were asleep over the last couple of weeks? I know that you know about it, Francesca. I saw that you put out a video on Instagram that went like basically viral, talking about these cuts. But the way they're going to try to get everybody to be okay with it is, no, it's not that we're cutting Medicaid. We're cutting it for people who don't deserve it. Those lazy bastards who aren't working enough because they're sick or disabled, or they're working because they work. This is like, how do you convince working people to accept their own economic subjugation? You just tell them, oh yeah, so you're gonna suffer, but don't worry. The ones who are lazy that you should hate, they'll suffer slightly more. Are you okay? Will you sign on to you losing the benefits that you've paid into for decades at this point? And he is hoping that people will accept that. Mike Johnson has no respect for the American people, certainly not for working people, certainly not for people who need Medicaid. And he is hoping that they will accept these absolutely massive, titanic cuts that they're gonna be doing so they can hand over trillions of our dollars to the wealthiest people in the country. Francesca, what do you think about it?
32% of people in his home state are on Medicaid. I mean, this is the party that I mean, I don't even know if we're calling it family values anymore, but 40% of all births covered under Medicaid, pregnant women covered under Medicaid, right? And that's not it. I mean, SNAP benefits benefit families with young children. WIC, women, infant, children, which helps families get a formula, in the early months of their and years of a baby's life. That's gonna be on the chopping block. All of these things are on the chopping block, and John, it's just crazy. Like, it's not only that they're just kind of trying to find some cuts and have a small government. It is, as you said, a direct wealth transfer. This is about finding money so that the rich can write off their yachts. That's what it is, so that they don't have to pay as much in taxes as you do earning $40,000 a year, right? Like, this is what it's about. The class war could not be clearer than in this budget bill. Now, I think some analysts are saying it's gonna have a steep road in the Senate, but the same analyst also said it's gonna have a steep road in the House. And the three Congress people who were a little bit on the fence immediately caved. Massey was the only one, and not because he's a good person, but because he's like, I don't think that we're gonna lessen the deficit like that. And it's like, shh, that's not the point. Shut up. Shut up. We were lying about the deficit. Nobody cares about the deficit so long as we're giving money to the rich.
Yeah, the deficit is a thing to talk about when Democrats are in charge. That's it. Because you don't want money to be spent to benefit actual working Americans, middle-class Americans. It's not a thing, like Donald Trump didn't add $8 trillion to the national debt his first term because of his deep love for deficit reduction, okay? He did it because you spend the money when Republicans are in charge, and then you leave the Democrats to try to fix things and be fiscally responsible. And sure, there are, if we go ahead to graphic 3, there are some senators who are like, no, we're not gonna allow you to cut Medicaid. And Josh Hawley says it, and Lisa Murkowski says it, and Tom Tillis says it. Yeah, but we also heard that they weren't going to allow some of these absolute conspiracist whack jobs to enter Donald Trump's cabinet, and they're all happily on there. The only one they didn't get was Matt Gaetz, and they didn't even have a chance. Maybe if they just waited, they'd have him too. And so please do not just expect that surely someone is gonna save my family's access to healthcare, because I have not seen that much of a backbone out of the Republicans so far. And just the idea that they're gonna do it again. They did it under Bush, they did it under Trump, they're gonna do it again. A massive culling, letting people lose everything, lose their homes, lose their lives, human sacrifice on a massive scale so that Jeff Bezos can get another yacht. So that Elon Musk can buy another election or whatever. That's what they're going to do. They talked about, somebody mentioned in the chat, they talked about death panels under Barack Obama. They're not even doing a panel right now. They're not even going to consider whether they should take away. They're just gonna cut for millions and millions of Americans. Your healthcare is gone. It's gone. You will not be able to afford it anymore. And many of you will die as a result of that. But it is, after all, very important that Mark Zuckerberg buys up more of Hawaii, I guess. It's a sacrifice I'm sure many Republicans, many Fox viewers will be very happy to make, so that Mark Zuckerberg can have a little bit more beachfront property. Anyway, we need to take our second break of the hour. When we come back, we have a story of corruption involving Elon Musk and Tesla that is almost too insane to believe. We'll have that for you after this. Okay, everyone, let's catch up on some of these chats. There's a lot. Robert Ryder in a super chat saying, did you know that Trump Gov signed an order to remove existing charge points for electric cars that will cost the government an estimated $1 billion to remove? I hadn't heard that exact figure, but yeah, they're not even doing lots of things to save money, and many of them are bad. What they're doing doesn't save money. In many cases, it costs way more money. The switch over to using military transport planes to deport migrants to Guantanamo, whatever, all of this is massively wasteful over and above the waste we already experienced. And so do not cede any rhetorical ground to them on fraud or abuse or anything like that. We've never seen more of those things than we're seeing right now. And again, as I say, what does Trump bring you? Chaos, crime, and corruption. Those are the three C's that we see every day. In fact, we're gonna come back to another example of that. We've got it with Rfk Jr., who owns stock in companies that are gonna be affected by the regulations he chooses or doesn't choose to put forward. Corruption at a scale we've never seen before. And why wouldn't we see that? We've never had more than $500 billion worth of cabinet secretaries. The rich have never had the stranglehold over our politics, our economy, our culture, our social media than they have right now. Now, Nick Silver Flame Dragon says, happy Fantastic Thursday to all those who celebrate. Thank you. Wendell says, lately I feel like I should be in church with the way John has been dressing. I don't think it's very churchy.
Yes, and preaching.
Pitchforks Dragon says, I love how John and Francesca go back and forth working each other up until they're eventually both pissed. And they need the social break.
I've been very calm all
You've been pretty calm.
All show. John's been on this other level of like, wow, it's not that bad, John. Like, I just like, things aren't, it's not like people are in Guantanamo right now.
I know, it's not like,
except for the people
that people have committed no crime or in solitary confinement.
Except for those that are, but even that is,
I know, it's utterly infuriating. By the way, I don't see the super chat, but there had been one that said, you're not doing your job because you're not making me deeply uncomfortable recently. I don't see it anymore, but thank you for sending. I did read it when it first happened. Let's see, the Centaur says in a super chat, I can't travel to the USA from Australia without 15 vaccinations, including measles. For now. We'll see what happens in the future. Bernie the Kiwi Dragon says, if he wants his press conferences to look good, turn off all those lights and close the curtains. That would certainly help. I think that it's brought a little bit of peace to Melania over the years. Maybe it would work for cabinet secretary meetings as well. Okay, let's see. Kai says in a super chat, hey Dragon Squad, let's come up with some alternative curse words John can use without getting in trouble. I vote for Fidiot, effing idiot. I need to learn some self-control. It's funny, yes, I do, but I'm gonna try to exercise some self-control. Brian Neal says, don't forget Blue Apron gift card, buddy. That is true, and I'm gonna get one sooner or later. Don't worry about that. Let's see. Jan Scott says, please, can you have a countdown to the midterms? It's a bit less disheartening. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but like, I already set it up. I think I'm just gonna stick with it at this point. And that's when the midterms are a battle, I think, but the big battle is the presidential election. That's where America gets the chance to truly throw these corrupt a-holes out. And the midterms are very important. In particular, like obviously for the Supreme Court and all that, for a number of other things, oversight would be great to see. So I don't disagree with you there. Okay, everybody. People in the chat are asking for a countdown to Fantastic Thursdays. It's only a few days between them.
Hey, anyway, I'm gonna do a countdown. First of all, I love that, but I'm gonna do a countdown to my show in Sacramento, people. Sacramento, Sunday, March 16th at the Punchline. Get your tickets. Come on, Sac. You know you can do it. Come on, Greater Sac.
No, there's got to be another term.
Greater Sac, I don't know, Sonoma or whatever the hell you are. Yes. FrancescaFiorentini.com or go to the Punchline. Also, newly announced Bay Area. I'm coming to me and Matt Lieb are going to be at Cobb's Comedy on May 7th. Massive space, so hope Dragon Squad rolls deep.
I hope so. Everybody definitely show up.
The Frantifa, and there's more announcements, John, but TBD.
Okay, well, we got 2 more stories for you. We got 10 minutes, but I think that we can do both. So we're gonna do that. Let's jump into this. We've got an example of corruption that is so insidious that you're not gonna believe it. And it almost made it by without someone noticing it. And it has to do with Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Tesla. So you remember that $400 million thing for armored cyber trucks, which was already utterly corrupt. The idea that, oh, Donald Trump gets to be president, so he's gonna hand over $500 million to Elon Musk. That's crazy. Well, it's actually worse than you thought. they say the cover up is worse than the crime. I don't know if that's in this case, it's actually worse, but it's pretty bad too. And so what originally happened was the Biden administration had asked the agency, the State Department, to explore interest from private companies to produce armored electric vehicles. Okay, so they opened up a public request for information to gauge interest and heard from only one company, Tesla. Okay, so they had allocated $483,000 for electric vehicle purchases. And so I guess they were gonna do it under Tesla because Tesla had been the only company that at that point had actually put forward a bid for a very small amount of money. That's like 4 Cybertrucks. That's not a lot of money at this point. Okay, so a former White House official familiar with the plans, this is according to DropSite, suggested that the $400 million allocation that we've been talking about was a deliberate move, not a clerical error. Okay, so the State Department and Tesla had agreed to research armoring electric vehicles under Biden, but no funds had been earmarked for armored Teslas. The approved less than $500,000 budget was intended for light duty EVs, and another $3 million was set aside for supporting equipment like charging stations. The revised procurement document that changed it from 400,000 to 400 million indicates it was originally published in December at the end of then President Joe Biden's term, but it doesn't appear in the Internet Archive for that month, which means that not only did they change the number, but they backdated it to make it seem as if Joe Biden had done that rather than them. So they changed the number from 400,000 to 400 million. They made it armored Teslas rather than light duty electric vehicles, which in theory could have been produced by Rivian or Chevy or whatever, other companies. And they tried to change the paper trail, it looks like, to make it seem as if this was Joe Biden and not Donald Trump. Again, handing over nearly $500 million to the richest person in the world, who also happens to be his co-president right now. And so Ryan Grimm has been spreading this on Twitter. DropSite News did great work in journalism in unveiling this as well. I mean, this is particularly insidious. And again, as I say, chaos, crime, and here, corruption. And possibly also crime. We'll have to see about that, but definitely corruption, Francesca.
I hadn't been across this story in terms of what the new White House's line was. Was it that this was a Biden purchase and it was always going to go through?
That's what they're implying with the changed paperwork, yes.
Well, right, so, but it's again, like just do the corruption. Just do it. I'm now like, what again? This is like drawing your attention to it. So now exactly, you're so fragile about how corrupt you're being. Elon's trying to cover his ass, even though it's hanging out for everyone to see, to make it look like this was a Biden move. And by the way, it was gonna be $400,000. What's that, 5 Teslas, like 4? Yeah. Like there's just a few Teslas, and then the deal was never necessarily signed. And they were like, let's just add some zeros. That's so pathetic.
It's grotesque, grotesque. Yes. Well, with that said, we'll see. Again, people are saying it's only a crime if someone will actually investigate it, and obviously they won't, because it's a lawless regime. The DOJ, the FBI, all of that has been taken over. It's the personal lawyers of Donald Trump. They are above the law, and the law does not exist, certainly not for millionaires and billionaires. Okay, with that said, let's move on to our final topic of the hour. And I definitely want to talk about this with Francesca, who I'm sure will have thoughts. Tulsi Gabbard has already fired more than 100 intelligence officers, but while that might sound like a lot, she says she has a good cause. It's because of their lewd, inappropriate conversations. She said they were sending horrible messages to each other, and so they had to be fired. No review, just gone, 100 of them. And so you might hear that and think, oh my God, what the hell were they doing that justified this? Well, it turns out that there's a lot of lying going on, and it's so Tulsi Gabbard. But as with so many terrible things happening, you can trace it back to Chris Rufo, who said that he had obtained logs from the NSA's secret transgender sex chat room in which these intelligence officials had discussed a bunch of things, which when you read it, you're like, oh my God, why are they talking about this? Genital castration, artificial vaginas, pee fetishes, sex polycules, and gangbangs, all on government time. This is insane. And it would be if that's at all what had happened, but it didn't. And why would you expect that Chris Rufo would tell the truth? He's been very clear that he believes that you should lie to people to achieve your culture war identity politics goals. And that's again what he's doing here. That's not at all what these discussions were. It was some trans employees and other LGBTQ plus employees that used some of these chat rooms to talk about things like gender affirming care, the experience of having breasts removed or hair removal, or the experience of having breasts, I should say, and hair removal. There was a reference to breasts. Someone talked about getting their butt zapped by a laser. They weren't sexting each other. It was a discussion about hormone therapy and epilation. That's all it is. And so the specific things he references there, gangbangs, they don't actually appear in the logs that he has put forward. Pee fetishes, no. There was a reference to urination, not in a sexual context. He's just lying to you, hoping that you won't look into it. And so they don't actually have the evidence that they implied that they did, but Tulsi Gabbard doesn't care. Tulsi Gabbard wants to get rid of them. She doesn't want our intelligence services to function correctly. Donald Trump has no interest in that. And this is the perfect crime for Tulsi Gabbard because, as you know, she has been a raging homophobe her entire life. She used to be part of that anti-gay cult or whatever. And then she assured us for years, no, I'm not that way anymore. Not at all. What's the first thing she does once she's given a shred of power once again? Crusade against the LGBTQ plus community in pursuit of right-wing identity politics. That's what you've got out of Tulsi Gabbard, Francesca. What do you think?
I mean, it's wild, right? It's just wild persecution. And not persecution over anyone's political beliefs, but over one's identity. And that's all this is. She also obviously got rid of people who criticized her, which honestly, if you're working in an intelligence agency and Tulsi Gabbard, AKA Russian asset, is going to be the head of everything, you'd probably be a little concerned and be like, I don't know if she's qualified for all this, you know? She's pretty good at surfing, not so good when it comes to being the director of national intelligence. So we knew this was happening and this was gonna come. And the other thing that they're doing with all these intelligence agencies is that they're purging them of so-called DEI programs. And those programs, we all understand, are anything that actually, number one, hires people of color, queer people, women, but also might investigate white nationalist organizations, the actual identity politics people, right? The people who are so obsessed with purity and whatnot. And we all know, Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, told us that the biggest, the greatest purveyors of violence right now are homegrown terrorists, right?
Yep.
Usually anti-government militias, white nationalists, on and on and on. We saw it in Charlottesville, we saw it on Jan 6. All those folks are now out of prison. So I don't know, it's truly chilling. And again, this is of course what she was gonna do. And I just can't imagine. I can't imagine being one of these people. And I also can't imagine being the person who is control F finding butt.
P, butt.
P, butt, laser,
hair,
breast.
Yeah.
Itties, that is definitely happening. That's all they're doing.
Yep, no, that's their life. Because again, I don't want to take us back to 2024, but they're awful. They're also deeply weird. Chris Rufo is a deeply strange, weird little creature. He leads a weird life, obsessed with other people's private life. And so they were fired. I'm not too worried about it though. I think that they will get their jobs back. You know why? Because I know that any minute, JD Vance is gonna sweep in and be like, I don't think that people's social media activity should ruin their life. Everyone needs to get off their back with the free speech. Remember, he was defending the normalized Indian hate guy, the guy saying violent racist things. And so I'm sure he'll be here to defend people's free speech rights on social media, right? See, he's gotta be coming up any minute. Can we get an update when he actually appears? Because it's gotta be coming any minute. Anyway, obviously, no, there's nothing they are faker on than the concept of free speech. Anyway, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the first hour of the show, but there's a lot more to come, including our interview with Matt Gertz of Media Matters coming up in the aftermath, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, one and all, to the Aftermath. John Iadarola here, Francesca as well, and a special guest to come in just one moment. Thank you for joining us. We're gonna be doing an interview in a second. We also are gonna be talking about a few more topics, and so definitely stick around for that. But also, if you're a member on YouTube, you may not know, but with Francesca coming to Thursday, that means that our bonus members content also has come to Thursday. And so we'll be releasing a clip that we'll be recording right after the show. We'll be talking about Pedro Pascal and the fight he's having on Instagram with right-wingers who are not happy about a pro-trans meme, basically, that he posted. And as with everything else about Pedro Pascal, it's a delightful story. So we'll be discussing that. And also a reminder that I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I'm going to a wedding, but Yaz is gonna be leading the show. Jordan Ewell, fresh off of his wedding, is gonna be joining her. They're gonna be doing stories, garbage people, all that. Please show up, show support for them. I'd really appreciate that. And I'll be watching remotely as well. But with all that said, why don't we jump into the fun? We got to talk about Dan Bongino. I've been waiting to give my thoughts, but more important than my thoughts, we wanted to bring in someone who's been following the career of this guy who used to be a blowhard on podcasts or whatever, and now is an incredibly powerful person, because that's the sort of world we live in. We are joined now by Matt Gertz, senior fellow at Media Matters, to break down the rise of Dan Bongino. Matt, welcome to the Damage Report.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And so you've been covering right-wing media for like a decade and a half at this point. Dan Bongino's career doesn't go back quite that far, but we're gonna be getting into what it means for him to be in this incredibly senior position in the FBI. But just for the people who might not really be familiar with Dan Bongino, who is he? What place does he have in the right-wing media ecosphere? What has he been doing since Donald Trump became a national thing?
Well, he's been rising steadily. Dan Bongino, I first encountered back when he was a host on NRA TV in, I think, 2016, 2017. The NRA for a while had a web-based streaming platform with some sort of cable news type shows, and Bongino was one of the hosts. He, I think most famously from that period, did a spot that featured him wearing a shirt that said "Socialist Tears" and putting several whole lemons in a blender. And then it went to a title card, and you heard a whirring sound, and that is not how you make lemonade, I have to say. But you know, over the course of Trump's rise, he rose right with him. He became a Fox News contributor after NRA TV fell apart, then got his own show there, and eventually a couple of years ago went off on his own, focused on his podcast and his streaming show outside of the Fox bubble. But yeah, I mean, he is someone who has been deeply tied into the right-wing media for this last phase of his career. And now he is going to wield awesome power as deputy director of the FBI. And hopefully he won't throw me in jail for that joke about the lemonade.
I can't wait to find out. I'm expecting that I will probably be locked up any moment, because longtime viewers of the show probably know that I dueled with Dan Bongino online when I pointed out that his best-selling book had been the recipient, according to the New York Times, of bulk purchases, and he was not happy about that at all. So I'll probably be locked up soon as well. But let's talk about the transition from media to FBI. I don't know a lot about his past in law enforcement. I imagine that he has a lot of experience, like anyone else who would be deputy director of the FBI. And while I don't follow his commentary, I assume that he probably talks a lot about how you need an impartial FBI and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, that not exactly. So he does have some law enforcement background. He was on the NYPD for a while, and then the US Secret Service. And then he attempted several failed congressional campaigns before eventually trying to rebrand as a right-wing media star. But the bulk of his commentary over the last 5-6 years has been about how terrible the FBI is, how it has been attacking Donald Trump, how it has been unfairly going after various right-wing people. He's basically the last person you'd want if your purpose was to have an impartial FBI. He is someone who has been very loud and vocal about his desire for the FBI to go after various enemies of the president, and now he will have the power to actually do it.
Yeah.
And so, oh, sorry, Francesca.
I was just gonna jump in. I mean, he's like wildly violent in his rhetoric, right? He made me watch The Dark Knight Rises because he had a whole comment about how, these judges that are trying to, put injunctions on Trump and Elon's lawlessness should be subjected to Bane-like courts. And why should we do this? We should just do like what Bane did and the Scarecrow and have kangaroo courts. And I think he truly means and believes that. I guess I'm wondering, look, the FBI has a lot of files on very legitimately dangerous people, actually from the right. We're talking about like homegrown terrorists and anti-government militias. Does Bongino have any like crossover with, sort of actors that are, as we know, if it's, Stone or Bannon's Proud Boys connections, Peter Navarro's Proud Boy connections and things like that? Like, is there anything truly terrifying about like maybe some of the people that he uplifts or talks with?
That's not really his circle. He's much more of a kind of mainstream Fox News guy than someone who is tied in as much with the far right. I do think that what we will see under a Bongino-headed FBI is federal law enforcement focus much less on dangerous elements of the far right and focused far more on Antifa, that sort of thing.
Sure.
He is very steeped in that entire worldview that the left is violent and dangerous and needs to be repressed and investigated. And I think we'll see a lot of that in the years to come.
Would not be surprised. And the 1-2 punch of him and Kash Patel, in terms of like all that we've heard about how the DOJ and the FBI have been weaponized. Like, again, if you wanted to weaponize it, I feel like those two would be the ones that you would pick. But Dan Bongino is not the only former Fox News contributor or host. We've seen many, and I know that you and Media Matters have been profiling that. It kind of feels like, for all that Donald Trump has attacked Fox News over the years, the Fox Newsification of the Trump administration goes beyond anything that even I would have predicted. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Sure. I mean, Donald Trump is personally obsessed with Fox News. He watches a ton of it. A lot of his closest allies and advisors have been Fox News hosts. People like Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham became incredibly powerful figures during the first Trump administration because Donald Trump was watching their shows every night and really taking their advice about, how to respond to a global pandemic or, what pardons to dole out. It was really a remarkable and disturbing phenomenon. But along the way, he would basically cast people from the network to be in his administration. He had about 20 of those people during his first administration. And as of right now, he's already named 20 to the second administration. You can see their names on my whiteboard of crazy behind me.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, but there's just from the defense secretary Pete Hegseth, who was previously a Fox and Friends weekend host, to Tulsi Gabbard, to now Dan Bongino. There's just a wide range of people who Trump became familiar with because he was seeing them on his television, who sort of made their bones as bomb throwers who would say nice things about him and would say terrible things about his enemies. And now those people are going to be leading the government.
And I know when we were discussing over email, Dan Bongino, in terms of his loyalty to Trump, has referred to Trump as an apex predator and the Lion King, which I mean is just amazing. Like Dan Bongino has that quality that all of these right-wing men have to have, which is this weird submission and pseudo-sexual admiration for Donald Trump of all people. I've never gotten over their willingness to just bow down to Donald Trump in that way. But in closing, we've got 20 that have already hit the Trump administration. Based on your watch of both Trump and Fox News, who's next? Are we gonna have Greg Gutfeld in charge of something? Like who do you think's the next through the revolving door?
I mean, I think it's impossible to say. There are so many people who Trump has become familiar with simply because he saw them on television, and really any one of them could become a powerful figure in this administration. Even someone like Sean Duffy, who was entirely inconsequential on the network, really like not someone who would strike you as particularly interesting in any way, can come away with being transportation secretary. Then the planes all start falling out of the sky, which is not ideal.
Matt, when you said Sean Duffy, I was like, oh, let's not exaggerate. Obviously, he's not. And then I realized, oh, wait, he already did. We are in ridiculous times that are impossible to parody. But anyway, we appreciate you joining us to talk a little bit about Dan Bongino. Perhaps when Dan Bongino starts the camps to round up the media, assuming that both of us aren't in them, maybe we can discuss. Or if we're both in the camps, I guess we can discuss there.
I've never said anything about Dan Bongino other than he looks like a Lego man. He really, his head is.
It's a bit Lego-esque.
It's Lego-like.
But until then, where can people follow your work and Media Matters work?
You can see my work at MediaMatters.org, and I'm also on all of the major social media networks at Matt Gertz, Gertz. If you get that wrong, you'll end up at a former congressman's handle, and I am not responsible for those tweets.
I hope your Venmo handle's at least different.
Definitely. Yeah, so don't get mad at Matt Gertz when Matt Gaetz does something either terrible or potentially illegal. In any event, thank you, Matt. We really appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, we have a couple more bits of news that we're gonna talk about. But first, I do wanna read a couple of comments. I don't know that we're gonna be able to read them all, but as always, thank you so much for sending them in. We do appreciate it. Case says, but how can we even resist what is happening? Who can we even unite behind? We have to have someone who can carry the rally call. I agree, we're trying to profile people who are doing good work. We're actually gonna do that in just a sec. In terms of leaders, I can't tell you definitively who the leader is right now. We're waiting to see. In terms of what you can do,
we're all leaders. Boom.
Yes, there you go.
Everyone's
and also
a leader.
We profiled, there's the blackout of corporate spending tomorrow that we talked about yesterday on the show. That's a thing that you can do. There's protests, there's calls, there's town halls you can go to, assuming any Republicans are still doing that. There are some things you can do, and we're gonna continue to update that as more opportunities arise. But for now, we do wanna talk about one of the good ones. So with that, let's jump into this.
Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem.
And so, look, I love everything that Jasmine Crockett said there. I am a little bit mad at the camera person for just staying on her. I really feel like they should have done a panning shot across all the Republicans who are just like, I can't say that. I know that it's true, but I'm not allowed to say it. That would have really sold the moment. But unfortunately, all we have is Jasmine Crockett willing to admit that which is obviously indisputably true. And she expands on the topic here.
It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Y'all, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who.
Yeah, and so look, I think that one of the things of the many things that we need to do over the next 4 years is state the truth. Russia invaded Ukraine, and it doesn't matter what Donald Trump says about it. It doesn't change that. Russia invaded Ukraine. They tried to do a coup on January 6th. Again, doesn't matter if we ever get justice for that. Doesn't matter if he pardons people. That's what happened. Trans people exist. They always have, and they always will. These things do not become untrue just because a despot is in charge. And so I'm glad that there are some people who are willing to speak up about it. Now, what is Trump focused on right now? Well, his big minerals deal. He wants to get that. He feels like we, I guess, should own the minerals of Ukraine or whatever. And some Republicans might think, well, that's good. We should steal that. We should steal far more in value than we gave them in weapons. That makes sense to us, but not so fast. First of all, you're never gonna get that money. That's not how it's gonna go. That's not how it's gonna work. It's going to go to business people. That's who it's gonna go to. And also, it's not even gonna go to them very quickly. Experts are saying it could take many years for any of this, even if it happens, to pay off. So setting up a rare earth mine costs at least $2 billion. So it's gonna take a massive investment. Again, more costs that we're gonna have to pay. And profits won't be generated for 10 to 15 years. Even specifically for lithium, it's 3 or 4 years away. To put that in perspective, Donald Trump, in theory, won't be president anymore. And judging by me watching him, probably won't be around anymore. That's how far off it is at this point. You can roughly track it to the counter right behind me. And so it's not the sort of amazing deal that Donald Trump has described it to be and has used massive lies in pursuit of. But Francesca, what do you make of all this?
I got a lot to say. I mean, first of all, the GOP has been bought and sold, and Russia is part of the buying, okay? We know that Republicans, this is separate from the Trump collusion stuff in 2016 and 17, that Republicans visited Moscow in 2018. Republican senators went there, just so you know, whatever, just like see how their barons were doing, their benefactors were doing, right? We're not supposed to talk about all the money that came through the NRA to the Republican Party and the Trump administration. Man, why else would they go along with this? Yeah, like occasionally you'll have a Lindsey Graham who says like, I don't agree, but like, here Jasmine Crockett is calling everybody out. Yeah, and I'm glad she is. And it's psychotic, right? Just breaking news, Keir Starmer of the UK is visiting with Trump, was asked whether, Trump is asked if the UK was invaded by Russia, would the United States help? And Trump's response was, I think they can handle it themselves. They've got it. They can fend for themselves. I mean, it's wild, right? It's wild, and you gotta think like, Putin, he's super happy right now. And if I were Crockett, I would watch out because she is one of the lone voices speaking out against this. On the minerals deal, a few days ago, last week actually, it seemed like it wasn't gonna happen. Zelensky said verbatim, I can't sell my country out like that. It was really admirable and it was incredible, but also Ukraine is Ukraine. And they don't have the funds, they don't have the military, they don't have obviously what Russia has, the gas that Russia has. And they are once again in the crosshairs of Donald Trump's extortion racket in the service of Vladimir Putin and of course their own pocketbooks. So what is Zelensky gonna do? He's gonna sign the minerals deal. And again, as you mentioned, it's not even gonna benefit Trump, and it's like not even worth all that much. But here you have someone who is being strong-armed, right, by Donald Trump, by our dictator, and it's really disgusting. Like, we've gone from supporting Ukraine to strong arming and again extorting and on and on. And whether it was the dirt on Joe Biden or whether I don't even know what Trump wants from Zelensky. What could he possibly? It's like. You know what I mean? And I love it because he's not even trying to dig up dirt on Gavin Newsom or anyone because he's not planning on leaving office.
Yeah, no, 100%. And by the way, I don't want them to make that deal. I think that's insane. I don't want the US military to become mercenaries. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like that at all. But I also understand that they're in a very difficult spot and have been ever since Donald Trump won the election. Their territorial integrity, their identity, their society, their culture, all of that is now at the mercy of two despots. And they're stuck with taking like a mob protection deal sucks. But when the alternative is Zelensky's definitely will die individually. He will definitely be killed by Putin as a part of whatever happens here, and likely will anyway, by the way. If you think that Zelensky's gonna live the next 20 years, I think that that's far less likely now. And many other Ukrainians will as well. So what is he supposed to do? Okay, America it's obviously the shining hill, shining, beacon on the hill or whatever was always obviously overplayed, but we're not even pretending to be that. We're not even aspiring to be that anymore. And so you're caught between these two madmen. And so he's in a very difficult spot. But that said, we only have a few more minutes, so I wanna make sure that we get to our last topic. So why don't we jump into this? More and more Trump voters are realizing that actually Donald Trump kind of sucks and doesn't really seem to care about them and is actually firing a bunch of them despite their love and admiration for him. And so let's run through a few of their grievances.
There's a lot of babies getting tossed out with the bathwater, to use an old-fashioned phrase, in this first few weeks. And of course, as usual, and I'm disappointed about this with President Trump because he served before, we're just forfeiting respect internationally daily. If we had a drinking game where everyone took a drink when the word reverse course or walking this back would be drunk in 20 minutes. It's chaos up there.
You can talk a good game. I'm just looking for the come through. I'm looking for, for the person that, many of us voted for or didn't vote, which I'm just waiting to see what happens next. Things need time, and I'm very optimistic for change.
Yeah, and so they're optimistic for change. Some are still holding out hope that he'll do the right thing even once, and others are saying no, it's utter chaos, and that's what it is. It's the first C: chaos, crime, and corruption. That's what you're seeing. You're getting rid of like Ebola protection and then bringing it back, which it doesn't even seem like they did. But getting rid of it in the first place, getting rid of those who are safeguarding our nuclear weapons, getting rid of those investigating the bird flu. It's chaos out there. And a lot of people are being fired. Many of them are actually Trump voters. And so we want to give you another disappointed voter. This is a 2-time Trump voter and Department of Agriculture researcher who said, I was thinking there would be changes, but instead of being focused, this is just going completely off the rails, chopping and slicing up parts of the government that are protecting Americans. The person who spoke on the condition of anonymity to increase his chances of regaining his jobs because he's been fired. They are just in this shock and awe mode with no concern about all the damage that's being done. No one is asking how they're gonna put all this to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And I don't know why you'd expect at this point that they would. Francesca?
Yeah, I mean, it's what the other thing about like firing all these people is that there are Trump supporters in the federal government. The idea that the deep state is made up of, a bunch of people who are like all Nancy Pelosi is like, personally deployed is ridiculous. And obviously like, being out and out with your political support as a federal worker, I think there are like actual laws against that. But it is important to state, like, as a federal worker, I did believe in Trump. I voted for him twice, man, in the middle of COVID. Damn, you gotta really like Donald Trump to be like, yup, that bleach guy. And this is what does it for you. And John, I don't know where you stand on this. I was having this debate with Wajahat Ali on America Unhinged about like the FAFO. F around and find out, all the Trump supporters that are now realizing, my Medicaid, my SNAP, farm subsidies, whatever it is, are going away. And I think, I say like, we should welcome these folks. But he was saying, look, these are also people who were super okay with cruelty being waged upon so many of us, right? So it's all good if it's undocumented migrants who are, by the way, not criminals who are currently being targeted. That's fine. It's okay if it's trans people. It's okay if it's people of color. It's okay if it's, whomever, women and all of our reproductive freedoms. But when it comes to me, suddenly it touched me and now I'm convinced. So it's like, look, we're gonna need this big coalition, but damn, it is hard to be like, you really have been on board this whole time.
Yeah, I think it can be very frustrating. I understand that when they've been not only willing to accept so much, but maybe enthusiastic about so much that we consider to be corrupt, terrible, like criminal. But I think that we need everybody on our side that we can get. Like maybe some people, the circle of their empathy isn't as big as ours, and it has to happen to them or someone they know for them to wake up. But if they wake up, I'd rather have them on our side going forward than not. And so I have a lot of my own. I have my own thoughts and feelings, but I also I know the strategy, and so I largely agree. But anyway. With that said, we are out of time. I really wish we had more time. There's so much news. There's too much news every day. But Francesca, always a pleasure to have you here. We're going to be doing our members' content, and people can not only see you on the Bitchuation Room, but also on your show on Zeteo.
Yes, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Tonight we'll be on talking about everything that happened.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you. Tomorrow, Yaz and Jordan will be taking over. Please show up. Show your support for them, make them feel welcome because they do amazing work. And I'll see you on Monday. But for now, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. We'll see you soon.